Welcome, friends and subscribers and viewers. I'm Yvonne Davis, and today we are looking at the final 48 hours. So I'm making this video on Monday, and it's actually noon in Washington, D.C. So we're literally at the 48-hour mark. And I want to look at the astrology because we're sort of reaching a peak right now, and I want to show you what that looks like in the astrology and help you to understand what's happening here astrologically. So what we see here is a planet return for the U.S. Sibley chart, which is the Declaration of Independence. You can see here it's set for January 19th, 2021. And I'll actually put it on the U.S. Sibley chart so you can see what that looks like. So this is the natal chart for the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776, 5:10 p.m., Philadelphia, PA. Now, some astrologers might use a slightly different time, but I think this chart is perfectly acceptable and definitely works. So I've been very happy with this chart. So here's what's happening on January 19th, just prior to the inauguration. What we see here is that the North Node is on Mars in the 7th house of others. So that's basically the people. That includes open enemies. We see Neptune opposite Neptune. That is the old values and the new values basically currently at war with each other. It was the same alignment as the American Civil War. And we can see Mars conjunct Uranus and Lilith in a square to the node. So this is very karmic, okay? So there's the North Node in Leo at 6 degrees, 36 minutes, and the South Node in Aquarius at 6 degrees, 6 minutes. So I also want to add in Chiron, because Chiron is the wounded healer. And so when you see Chiron activated in a chart, that means it's a point of wounding, okay? And what we see here is that the moon is on Chiron the night before the inauguration. And there's a wounding because our country has been torn apart. And there are obviously many, many forces at work. And I can't describe them all in this video. I've been doing videos about this for, in some sense, 3 years, but really talking specifically about the inauguration for the past year. And you can always find all those videos on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and look at them. But the moon is the people's emotions and subconscious, and it's activating Chiron the night before the inauguration. There's some kind of wounding. Now, the thing you have to understand about Uranus, which is highly, highly activated at this time, and the reason why it's so activated right now is mostly because of the fact that Mars is moving into conjunction with Uranus, which is an extremely volatile energy, probably the most volatile I've ever seen as an astrologer. In other words, I've been a professional astrologer for over a decade, and I was studying astrology since I was a teenager. And in all the years that I have been watching the planets moving across the sky and around the zodiac, I have seen that the Mars-Uranus conjunction and the Mars-Uranus opposition are the most volatile, the most dangerous, more dangerous than Mars by itself, although we did see a Mars-Neptune conjunction squaring the eclipse last summer, July 4th, the July 4th eclipse in 2020, and we saw the violence that erupted. So obviously Mars was highly, highly activated in that conjunction to Neptune squaring the eclipse on July 4th. But so that's kind of an unusual case because Mars was so activated in that T-square. But just by itself, Mars isn't necessarily violent or volatile. Yes, it can bring conflict. Yes, it can bring anger, but it can also motivate people to take action. But when it's conjunct Uranus, something different happens. Or when it's in opposition to Uranus, something different happens that's very unusual. And like I said, I've been watching this for over a decade, just specifically watching the transits of Mars in alignment with Uranus. And I've noticed it's most intense when it's conjunct Uranus or opposite Uranus. Now, in the square, it's usually not quite as intense, except and unless it's being activated by something else like a full moon. So the problem with the Mars-Uranus conjunction is that they're two malefics and they're both extremely volatile. And together, it's like TNT. But the other problem with Uranus is that it's unpredictable. And so what I've seen as I've been watching the alignments of Mars-Uranus conjunctions and oppositions, that you will almost see a public mass shooting take place, almost always, virtually. I mean, it's almost like clockwork. And if it's delayed in any way, usually it will be reactivated by a later new moon or full moon that specifically reactivates that Mars-Uranus conjunction. As an example of this, you can go back and look at the alignments on the day of the Aurora theater shooting when I think Batman, The Dark Knight was opening that night, and a young man came in and shot up the theater and killed quite a few people. And so the problem with this is that Uranus is the planet of unpredictability. So it's actually, in spite of the fact that, you know, there was a loss of life on January 6th, in a sense, those people, their lives were not lost in vain. And in particular, I'm talking about the Capitol officer, because I'm sure he didn't plan to die that day when he went to work, and it's absolutely tragic. But his death will not be in vain because of the fact that there was a warning shot. You could call January 6th a warning shot. It gave the authorities an opportunity to truly prepare. Now, you can never 100% prepare when it comes to Uranus, because Uranus is the planet of unpredictability. And when it strikes out of the blue. It's the lightning bolt. It's the lightning struck tower. And so I feel pretty confident that, and actually I always felt confident that that we really didn't need to fear the loss of life of our leaders on January 6th. I'm talking about specifically the inauguration. Although I was concerned about them holding it outside, and I was concerned about the crowds that would show up. That was my biggest concern. So January 6th has made a significant difference where that's concerned. Everything's closing down. There are roadblocks, you can't get in, and the trains are shutting down, the subways are shutting down, Airbnb is shut down. So in other words, they're really shutting down the opportunities for people to come in. They're not going to have a parade. They're closing down the mall. And this was all what I wanted to happen from the beginning. So it's unfortunate that we had to see a loss of life before they realized how dangerous this situation is. But I also want to say how grateful I am, because if they had not, but if this hadn't been brought to their awareness by what happened on January 6th, the loss of life would have been so much worse and so much more tragic. So, so that the people who died, particularly that officer, their lives were not lost in vain, because I can tell you the fact that January 6th happened is going to save so many more lives going forward. And because I hate to say this on YouTube, but Inauguration Day could have been a bloodbath. And I never wanted to say that. But that was my biggest fear, that Inauguration Day would be a bloodbath. But now I don't have that fear anymore, because of January 6th. It changed everything. Thank God. So, but there's still this wounding that's happening, okay? It's not over. And the most difficult days will be January 19th, 20th, and 21st, primarily because of the moon conjunction to Chiron, the North Node conjunction to Mars, and the squares of the Sun, Saturn, and Jupiter on the South Node opposite the North Node. Nodes mean it's karmic, okay? And then the Mars, Uranus, Lilith conjunction in Taurus that's squaring all of this, forming a T-square. So that's what I would say about the night of January 19th. We may see some violence. Like I said, Uranus is unpredictability. A lot of things were like predicted in the news about January 17th that was going to be horrible. As far as I know, it did not live up to what they were expecting. But that's because they were on notice. That's why, you know, the damage is not going to be as bad as it could have been. But that doesn't mean that something isn't going to happen. And that's the thing about Uranus, is it won't come out when it's expected. It will come out when it's unexpected. And so, you know, the good side is they're now expecting it for January 20th. So they're going to do everything they can to protect people. That's a good thing. Unfortunately, Uranus can still have an impact outside of Inauguration Day. So the most dangerous day when the energy is peaking is the night of January 19th with the moon conjunct Chiron and all the other alignments I just showed you. And then Inauguration Day itself, which I'm going to go into more depth on in this video. So you can see here on Inauguration Day, I set it for 2 hours after the beginning of the inauguration in Washington, D.C., because that's when the moon actually gets into Taurus and starts to add its energy to the Mars-Uranus conjunction. And I'm also going to show you the exact Mars-Uranus conjunction. So let me go ahead and put this on the US Sibley chart and show you what that looks like. All right, so at this point, Mars is at 6 degrees of Taurus, 42 minutes, and Uranus is at 6 degrees, 44 minutes. Again, they're in the square to the nodes. So this is extremely karmic. And Lilith is there, now the moon is there. Okay, Lilith is the shadow, things that hide in the shadow, that want to be seen, but are pushed into the shadow. And the moon is the people's emotions and subconscious. So let me really quickly make sure I have the chart for the Mars-Uranus conjunction, then I'll pull that up and show that to you. All right, so let's go look at that chart for the Uranus-Mars conjunction. And I'll put that on the US Sibley chart as well. So again, we've got the North Node on Mars. You can see the T-square here to the Neptune opposition. And Neptune is moving direct now, so it's moving toward an exact opposition to Neptune and an exact square to Mars and an exact square to the North Node. So the challenges that the new administration will face are very real and will need to be taken seriously. So now here we see Mars and Uranus conjunct at 6 degrees of Taurus, 44 minutes, in a square to the nodes, which are at 6 degrees, 36 minutes. That, I mean, it can't get more karmic than that, honestly. It's just absolutely astounding. It is so unbelievably karmic. And we know the underlying causes of it. I've talked many times about it in my videos, so I don't want to repeat that. I just wanted to kind of, in this final 48 hours, to just show you once again what the alignments are. And this is not, again, my purpose is never to scare you. My purpose is to prepare you. And I've been doing that for the past year and the past 3 years. And, you know, you can do with the information what you want. If it's too scary and you don't want to look at it, then certainly that's your right. I personally prefer to see what's happening. I prefer to see what's coming. That's why that's why I studied astrology to begin with, is because I wanted to know when things were going to be easy and I could take action during that time, but also to know when things were going to be difficult so that I could prepare in any way that I needed to prepare, mostly emotionally and psychologically. Again, I'm not actually worried about any of our political officials on Inauguration Day, at least the ones who are being inaugurated, you know, at that event, because I really do think that they've done absolutely everything that they can to prepare. And if there's some kind of inside element that's planning something, believe me, they won't get away with it. They will be stopped and they will be caught and they will be prosecuted. So, you know, just understand that the power is over here. The Sun, Saturn, Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius. That's the new administration. And yes, they have a problem on their hands. There's no doubt about that. But they will get through this, and they will be able to solve the problem. The other thing to consider is that this is the Inauguration Day chart, which means that this is the chart for his Biden's 4-year term. And what I want to say about this is that all of the alignments are occurring in what's called the first decan, which means that it's the first 10 degrees of the sign, okay? Because every sign has basically 30 degrees, and we call those decans. And so there's the first decan, which is the first 10 degrees, the second decan, which is the second 10 degrees, and then the third decan, which is the third 10 degrees. So all of these planets, the Sun, Saturn, Jupiter, the South Node, the Moon, Uranus, Mars, and Lilith, and the North Node, they're all in that first decan. And so that's actually good news, because what that tells you is that whatever they have to deal with during this first 4-year administration, they will deal with very early on, meaning basically the first year. After that, probably up until maybe a year from now, a full year from now, because of the fact that there are some weird things going on with Pluto at the end of 2021 and moving into the early months of 2022. And the nodes are also shifting signs. And so up until about March 5th, 2022, so that's almost a full year now from now, that will be the most difficult year of the administration. Once they get past that, it will be very different. It's not going to be like this their entire 4-year administration, okay? It's just the first part. And I know that as an astrologer because of the fact that that all of the planets are in the first decan. That's how you do the predictions, the timing predictions, is you look at the chart for the administration, and then you see where the most intense energy is located. And in this case, it's all in the first decan. That tells you it's going to happen early on, okay? Like in the first third of their administration. And then after that, it'll be so much easier. All right, so one more chart that I want to show you is the chart of when the moon reaches conjunction with Uranus and Mars. So let me go ahead and pause this and get that chart ready to go for you. All right, so let's go look at that chart. And this will be, well, maybe we'll look at the full moon too real quick at the end. So this is a chart for the next morning, January 21st at 4:08 a.m. in Washington, D.C. And I chose that date because you can see that from the night. So we looked at the night of January 19th, then all the way across January 20th, and then all the way into the morning of January 21st. So the moon basically crosses over and conjoins Uranus and then conjoins Mars. And so even though Uranus is the planet of unpredictability, and I'm sure there will be a lot of unpredictability in what's going to unfold over the next 24 hours, maybe 24 to 72 hours, I think even as an astrologer, it's pretty safe to predict that there probably will be violence across that time period, from the night of the 19th across the 20th and then into the morning of the 21st. And basically, probably there will be some violence that erupts, whether that's random violence, probably some random violence by individuals with Uranus being so unpredictable, but possibly also some collective violence, like mob violence, like we saw on January 6th. So anyway, that's, I really, even though I'm not worried about the people getting inaugurated, I'm not worried about those public officials at the inauguration, because I do believe that the protection is going to be adequate. And now we don't have to worry about all the people who are going to show up and celebrate, because those were the people I was actually most concerned about. But now I think it's more likely going to be more random attacks, or planned protests, mob protests, and armed protests, and mob violence and things like that. And it's just a reality. I just really don't think that with these kinds of alignments with Uranus Mars conjunction, and then the moon in there too, adding in the fuel of the emotions and subconscious and Lilith in there, I don't think there's any way we can get across that 72 hours without seeing some violence. So I think it's just something we have to accept. It's just going to be a reality. But of course we can prepare ourselves to the best of our abilities, and we can pray and meditate. And I think that's really important. And we can be with people that we feel safe with, and that will really help too. Just pray and meditate, and prepare. That's the best way we can get through these 72 hours. So, and celebrate too, because this is, remember, could have been a lot worse. Could be somebody else up there getting inaugurated. So I think that it's really, really important to count our blessings as well, even in these difficult times. So I don't think I'm going to look at the January 28th full moon again, because I've done it in past videos and this is probably getting pretty long. And I am going to do another video specifically about the full moon after we get through this inauguration period. So I started by saying the next 48 hours, but I think I'm going to call this the next 72 hours, because I think there may be potential for violence and riots across the both nights of the 19th, possibly the 19th and the 20th into the 21st. So hopefully, people have learned their lessons and it won't be as bad as it could have been. I really do think that that's the blessing of January 6th, and that that officer's life was not lost in vain, because it gave a warning shot, and that will save so many lives from here on out. If you want to join the Patreon meeting, We're going to have a party, Inauguration Day party, that starts a half an hour before the inauguration. So we're expecting the inauguration to start at noon, Washington, D.C. time. So we're starting a half an hour earlier, wherever you are in the nation. That would be just, recalculate for your time zone. Okay. And if you want to join that party, just come on over to Patreon and you're welcome to join the party. And that's the way I prefer to do it, because I like the intimacy and the community building that we can have, because we can see each other face to face on Zoom and talk to each other immediately on Zoom, as opposed to YouTube, where all we can do is the chat. And I really, I prefer the intimacy of Patreon. Plus, to be honest, it creates a filter. So if there are people who are showing up just to cause harassment and, cause trouble, it filters them out. So we don't have to worry about people like that showing up. So I hope that you would like to join us, and I would love to see you there. And otherwise, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Thank you for clicking like on this video and sharing with friends and family on social media. And I will see you in the next video. And that'll probably come after inauguration. So if you want more exclusive videos, ad-free, or advanced viewing, ad-free, and the Zoom meetings, come on over to Patreon. That's where I'll be.